Welcome to Comic and Screen. I'm Sam Otten, and that is Jason Book, and we're going to be talking some more Batman v Superman. So, currently, they are filming in the streets of Chicago. They have the streets closed off, and Warner Brothers has not been that protective. Like when I was back in Detroit, I got those first images of Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne, and I got an actual scene of Bruce Wayne kind of doing some action in the wreckage of Metropolis. And those have come out, other set photos have come out, and now in Chicago, more photos are coming out. Warner Brothers doesn't seem to care that much about actually trying to block off the view. I think they might actually be trying this as sort of a way to market the film. But what we've seen recently is Superman in costume with rigging and doing some actual kind of Superman stuff in the streets of Chicago, which seems to be filling in for Metropolis. So, Jason, what are your reactions to those shots of Superman in the suit, and we got Lois there and stuff, their interactions?
Oh, it looks pretty interesting. I mean, we really don't know what's going on. To me, the Gotham aspect of it comes into play because to me, Chicago is probably supposed to be Gotham. It just kind of would work for me because I think they filmed some of the Nolan films there, so that would be really cool. It's still weird to see photos of him without the cape because I know they do the cape a lot in the CG and post production. So it looked kind of funny to see him bouncing around and like kind of flexing his muscles and getting ready for takes with no cape on. It looks kind of funny. But
Right.
obviously we don't know what's going on, but it is cool to see that they're going to have these moments in the movie in between all the craziness of all the characters and all the action to still establish the Lois and Superman stuff because it's important. And especially because she knows who he is too. It makes it even kind of steps it up a notch.
Yeah, and there's no villain, like flying around with him or anything like that. So it doesn't really give away a lot. But we do see Superman. We see him scooping up Lois, which I think is a nice moment to actually have Lois in his arms and then kind of going. And I feel like they might be giving some of these kind of Superman Lois type scenes that a lot of people probably expected from Man of Steel. And because Man of Steel was this story of him becoming Superman, we didn't really get like a full movie of him as Superman with Lois in kind of the traditional way. But just looking at those stills and even some of the kind of motion capture that people have gotten, it seems like we might be getting a little bit of that kind of classic, Superman scooping up Lois type stuff.
Yeah, it's good to have that for sure.
Right. I'm curious about the cities because the Daily Planet is set up in Chicago. I think they actually might be doing kind of a mix and match. Like I think certain
Okay.
parts of Chicago might be Metropolis, but other parts of Chicago might be Gotham because you're right about the Nolan films. And then in Detroit, where they spent a lot of time filming, parts of Detroit were Metropolis because we saw the Metropolis buses and the Metropolis police cars. But I gotta think other parts of Detroit they're using for Gotham. So I think it's going to kind of be, there's not going to be a one-to-one mapping from the real city to the fictional city.
Well, you lived in Detroit. You know by like the buildings and stuff to you, does downtown Detroit feel more like it would be like Gotham or Metropolis?
I mean, there's definitely some buildings in Detroit that are Gothic in design,
Cool.
and it seemed like they were kind of doing some Wayne stuff, Wayne Manor and that kind of thing in other parts of Detroit. But
Right.
then the set that I actually visited, they had, definitely, painted it up and dressed it up as Metropolis. So I think it's going to kind of be a mixture of both.
That sounds like that's it. Yeah.
Speaking of Wayne, so they also built a set in Michigan out at a Girl Scout camp. They built it to be a Gotham cemetery, and it has a Wayne mausoleum. And then they ended up filming a scene. So minor spoiler here: if you don't know it, Batman's parents die. But
Spoiler alert.
there's this scene where there's like a horse-drawn carriage with like the coffin, and speculation is that this is a flashback scene to the funeral of the Waynes. So thoughts on this? Some backstory for Batman. It's really backstory that they don't need to cover. I think
Yeah.
people know this, but
Hopefully there's a
maybe as
twist
a
or
minor
something.
flashback, or I wonder too, like if it's this kind of if there's going to be some parallelism between like the Wayne's funeral and then another funeral that's maybe happening in the movie, which we'll spoil a little bit later, or maybe some parallelism of like maybe Clark visits Jonathan Kent's gravesite, and then at the same
Yeah.
time we maybe get like a flashback of like Bruce Wayne when his parents died. I feel like if they do draw some of those parallels between Clark losing his dad and Bruce losing his parents, that might actually, bring some emotional weight to the movie.
Yeah, I hope it's something like that or it's something original. We don't just need to see Batman at his parents' grave like we've seen a lot, or as a young boy. And we definitely don't need to see something weird where it's like in Batman when he was a kid, maybe, something to tie in with Superman at the gravesite. Like, we don't need that.
Right.
So hopefully it's more like what you spoke of.
Now, a big scene was filmed on the campus of Michigan State University, where I went to school, and they used the Broad Art Museum, which is a very futuristic, kind of modern-looking building. They had this scene. So, minor spoiler here. We have some major spoilers coming later, but the minor spoiler is Lex Luthor had some kind of gala or some kind of event, and we have a lot of the cast is reportedly was present at that scene. Now, we think what it was a reopening of the Metropolis library. So the library was damaged or something like that during Man of Steel, and Luthor, the speculation is he has bankrolled the reopening of the Metropolis library, and it's maybe even a way for Luthor to like thumb his nose at Superman because Luthor is kind of saying like humanity, we have all this knowledge and all of these brains, and
Mm.
Superman comes in with this brawn and this muscle. So it might be a way for Luthor to say like Superman and his brawn knocked down the city. Me and humanity, with all of our knowledge, we're rebuilding the city. So it might be some kind of tension between Luthor and Superman. At least I kind of hope it goes with that angle.
Yeah, that sounds like that would work really well.
Lois and Clark, or I think at least Clark, maybe actually both of them, are there as reporters covering the event. So we get,
Hmm.
a lot of the major characters maybe in this same scene together. So that makes it interesting to me as well.
Well, that's cool.
So to get into some major spoilers, so if you don't want to hear any more, we have some extras who have broken their contract and revealed some stuff. So here comes the first one. And by the way, I do want to go on record saying I'm not against spoilers, but I am against extras breaking their contract. If you sign a contract, you should take that seriously.
Totally.
But they made that decision. So what we have now from that scene at Michigan State is from this extra, he said that Luthor and Bruce Wayne, so Bruce Wayne is also there as kind of, a high roller. Maybe he's part of the fundraiser, I'm not sure. But whatever happens, Luthor and Bruce Wayne have a physical altercation. What is your thoughts on that, Jason?
Well, I think that'll work really well. My guess is they're going to establish Bruce Wayne going into business with Lex Luthor maybe before he really realizes what's going on behind the scenes. And you'll have one of those moments where, he finally kind of realized what's going on. To me, that sounds like what the altercation would be about. And that would just kind of lead him closer to teaming up with Superman because Superman knows he doesn't like him too. And so maybe near the beginning of the film, we'll get more of the Batman versus Superman stuff. And hopefully by the end of the film, they're kind of teaming up to take on Luthor. And this sounds like it could be something kind of the first step to that happening.
Yeah, and that's always a question in my mind when I hear about these different scenes. I have no idea if they're early in the movie, if they're middle, if they're
Sure.
late. And
Yeah.
I could imagine them in different ways if they're early versus middle versus late.
Hmm.
But yeah, if they're having a physical altercation, to me, that's probably further along in the movie because, yeah, maybe Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor are both kind of funding the effort to try to rebuild Metropolis.
Mm.
But then maybe throughout the movie, Wayne starts to get suspicious or starts to get on to Luthor's, whatever plan Luthor has.
Mm.
And so now this might be a point where, Bruce Wayne publicly is trying to appear with Lex Luthor, but Batman has maybe figured out Luthor, and so maybe that leads to them, Bruce
Hmm.
Wayne has had enough or something like that.
Yeah, we definitely know that it can't be that physical of an
I was
altercation.
just about to say Ben
Because
Affleck,
look
I
at
think.
Jesse Eisenberg and then look at Ben Affleck, okay?
Yeah, I'm thinking, if it's Lex Luthor's event, he's probably going to have his muscle there with him or something.
Oh, yeah, he should
So,
hope so, yeah, for sure.
yeah, because but that might be good to see, like Lex Luthor, and again, like Lex Luthor is so devious and he
Hmm.
manipulates people. Bruce Wayne is supposed to be pretty tough, and he's seen a lot, and he's pretty rough around the edges in this depiction.
Hmm.
So maybe Luthor is actually playing Wayne, and maybe he's goading him in to a
Yeah, who
physical
knows,
altercation
right?
because that makes Luthor look like the victim, and then it makes Bruce Wayne look like this big jerk or whatever.
Sure, or
So
like, it'll be where the classic moment where, he knows he can't beat him as Bruce Wayne, he has to beat him as Batman, and there goes the end of the movie.
So another extra said he was filming a big crowd scene with green screen around, so this was inside a studio. But the green screen, this extra said, was going to be used to create Washington, D.C., And then coming through the shot was a funeral procession, and this extra says that the funeral is for the President of the United States. So I'm trying to think about what to make of that.
Me too. I think for me, I don't see a reason why this should be in the movie at all. Like, what's going to happen at the very end? And they're like, we need to form the Justice League because the president died. Like, I think it's just kind of too far for this, unless it's part of the movie where they're kind of pulling a trick or something like that to bring out Luthor or something. Because if it's straight up that the president dies and Batman and Superman can save him and they bond together, it's doesn't ring true to what this movie should be. So not sure what to make of it either.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the big question is why, what caused the president to die? Was it the villain from the movie? Was it something else? Was it a natural disaster?
Hmm.
Or was it maybe just like, maybe the president is a character in the movie and then there's just like an illness and he dies? Or maybe it's just something that's happening in the nation and it's not really a central part of the plot. I don't know at
Fair
all what
enough,
to make.
right?
I don't know what to make of it at all. It does make me a little nervous because I'm like,
Yeah,
if you bring the president in, that's already a little bit distracting.
exactly.
Um,
And
like
it's not like there's not a million other characters in this movie already and things going on, right?
yeah, and then you have a president die, so then now that's even raising the stakes more.
There's already so much in this movie. They have to ask themselves before they wrote the scene, is this adding to the movie or taking away from the movie? Because if it takes you out of the movie, then it wouldn't work to me.
Yeah, so I think this one's a little riskier than like having Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne have an altercation. But again, we don't have enough information to really know. It does make me curious, and it definitely makes it seem like Washington D.C. and just like governmental politics and that kind of stuff is going to be a big part of it because we have, I think Holly Hunter's playing a senator.
Hmm.
So it seems like DC is going to play a pretty big role in the movie. So we've really got Metropolis, Gotham, and DC. I think are going to be kind of like the cities themselves might be kind of characters in the movie, and or at least like the politics of DC.
Yeah, and I like that aspect of it for kind of, it would make sense that if they're establishing that, Man of Steel is a new universe and all that, that the destruction scene in Man of Steel is going to have repercussions all across
Right.
North America and beyond, but definitely within the states, kind of something we
Hmm.
haven't seen in a Superman movie before, where they're really questioning him. Because in the Christopher Reeve films, he was always kind of there to help them all the time, and to go on a different foot to start off is kind of interesting.
I mean, if they write it well, and if they kind of make the political part of it pretty realistic, I think it could work. But then, why does the president die? That's like a big question.
Yeah,
So, like to
hopefully
me,
that isn't really happening. I mean, it seems too much.
yeah, and yeah, there could be a lot of things. I mean, like I said, it's not confirmed, and then it could even be just a supposed funeral for the president.
Sure.
Who knows
To
what there
draw out
could be going
Luthor
on?
or something. Who knows, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like crazier things haven't happened in the comics. So
That's true. I mean, there was like, yeah, all sorts of stuff. And my only thing is that if they're doing this, I hope they don't do something cheesy where it's faked and then it's Superman as the president in there and he pops up or something ridiculous like that. I mean, I think they did a comic like that in the 60s or something where he
right.
pretended to be the president, and I think they had to get rid of it because that's around the time that JFK got assassinated.
Yeah, that's the thing that I remind myself sometimes when people say in these comic book movies, they'll say like, "Wow, that's kind of far-fetched" or whatever, and I'm like, "Man, comic books have done 10 times more
That's true.
far-fetched things than."
Yeah, it is pretty funny that we're sitting here arguing or talking about the president maybe getting killed in this movie where it's involving aliens and guys
Or
that can
Lex
fly.
Luthor was president for like years, like in several different universes.
That's
So,
true. I don't think they'll go there that soon. I mean,
no, no,
that to
no.
me would be something that would make sense in the Justice League film, maybe between part one and two.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, all right. So a lot to dig into. They're going to wrap filming pretty soon, so we might not
Oh,
be having a lot of this stuff in the future, but it's good when it's around. I like digging into it, so thanks for talking with me about it, Jason.
yeah, for sure. Anytime.